All right, now I'm joined by Olympic silver medalist and now World Championship bronze medalist Jess Hall, fresh off of an epic World Championships in Tokyo, also making the 800-meter final as well. We were just before we started recording talking about how long of a year it's been, and it's kind of incredible that you've been going since indoor season all the way through September. So, how are you enjoying this break so far?
It's good. It's actually quite different to finish the season and like choose to take my break, whereas I feel like the last couple of years I've maybe been hanging on. So it was nice to end with Worlds and just to enjoy the downtime now and look towards next year. It all comes back thick and fast again. So I've just been really trying not to think about it over the last 2 weeks and totally reset.
So when you choose to go on a break, like what does that look like? Because I guess like it didn't hit me until just a couple days ago that there's also, I guess, like world cross country on the horizon, and so some people will be like gearing up for that. And I guess like the last time when it was in Australia, you ended up doing the relay, and so there is sort of like that option for the middle distance runners. So I mean, is your break like kind of active right now, but already there's a date in the end of October to get back to work?
Yeah, definitely. I think having done World Cross Country and done the relay before in Bathurst, like I was super keen to start like getting a team together for Tallahassee, and we have such a great middle distance crop right now that I think that 4x2K team is going to be a great team, but it's also like it's really soon, so it is important to kind of be thinking about it without like not taking a break properly. So I think for me that's certainly on the horizon, and I just like the geography of World Cross in America, and then you can stay and do an indoor season. And if you want to do some altitude before that, it just all makes a lot of sense. So the mind is definitely going and thinking towards that, and definitely trying to recruit. I have actively been talking to Cameron Myers all year, like, hey, World Cross, it's really fun, this whole relay thing. Please be interested. But yeah, so our selection for that is kind of just discretionary. So I think as long as we've all put our hands up and said, hey, we want to run, our high performance team are going to put a great team together. So hopefully that's where we'll start in January.
So another funny thing, I think I said this to you at some point during the Grand Slams or something like that, just like how much you'd already traveled up until that point where you were racing so often all around the world, going back all the way to Australia for nationals and everything. So it's funny because at the end of the year, everyone on Instagram posts just sort of like number of flights that they were on. And I think last year, the most appalling one, I think, was, I guess, your agent, Stephen Haas, who I think spent like 28 days in the air at some point, which is like a whole month of the year on flights. And so far this year for you, I guess, like, how are those numbers looking?
I would say they're pretty high. It's not, I haven't kept track of it. I did at one point intend to do the Flighty app, and
Yeah.
it required some sort of extra information about my passport or something when I did it, and I must have just not gone back to it. So I haven't tracked it, but I have definitely traveled the most I ever have this year, which is a big thing to say because, like, being from Australia, we do always have to travel. So to have added extra mileage onto it this year is a bit different, but it's quite lucky that through the Grand Slam they flew us in style, so we never missed any training. You could kind of arrive pretty fresh and get ready for what was to come. But yeah, it's been a big year of back and forward, and I probably would have preferred to not do so much cross Pacific travel. Like, kind of, I try once I leave Australia, I try not to have to go back till the end of the season. But just with the early dates of those Grand Slams, I had to make the trip back for nationals. And yeah, it's something I knew when I signed up in October. So it was like I had a lot of time to get my head around the task. But yeah, I was quite happy once we left for Miami, and I was going to be able to stay overseas in the Northern Hemisphere for the rest of the summer.
So I want to unpack this year, and I really kind of want to start at the end of last year and then looking into 2025 because, at some point after Paris and, ahead of the indoor season, you had to kind of maybe reflect on just the fact that 2024 was a dream season with just like how much time you took off of your PB in the 1500, the medal in Paris, the world record that you ran in Monaco, and it's a lot to kind of celebrate and take in, but then it sets the bar so high for the following year. And so even before this year started, how did you go about, I guess, not necessarily just goal setting, but mentally approaching 2025, knowing it was another world championship year and that basically everything that you just did, like it restarts on January 1st and it's a whole nother calendar year. So how did you go about just kind of approaching 2025 at that point, given the success of 2024?
Yeah, I think it comes on quite quickly, but your mind immediately goes to like, okay, how do I keep getting better, and how do I go one step better in 2025? And I think from the start of the season, it just sort of it was very different. Like you are kind of the person that the meet directors are asking what pacemaking you want and who you want to pacemake and how far you want them to go. And it was quite different because I really haven't never had that. Like it's always been like I show up to the Diamond Leagues, I read the board, and it's like, okay, Faye for Gudaf wants 203, this is what we're doing. Or if Gudaf's running, it's Gudaf wants 159. And it's like, okay, that's what we're doing today. So I think that was quite a thing to get used to. And in one hand, like it was really cool because it's like, okay, my fitness is really elevating as well. And there's some opportunities to take some big swings and have some big races out there. But at the same time, it's very different when everyone's looking at you and expecting you to do things. And even sometimes the field like are looking to you to dictate the race and make the race. Like that was a different position to be in, and I think it's taken the whole season to kind of get used to that, and to sort of take some learnings from it going into 2026. But it was quite different to just be someone that was expected and had pressure on them. And I've heard Georgia Bell speak about this a few times as well, where last year was almost easier because you kind of could just float along and catch a really fast ride along behind Faith Kipyegon. But dream races like that happen a handful of times in your career if you're lucky. But then to elevate again, you've kind of got to take that into your own hands and get used to doing things that are outside of the comfort zone. So I think just kind of being that person that people looked at to perform was something that I had to get used to, and I probably didn't do it the best this year, but that's next year. It's something that I hope to improve on, and going forward, it's something to get used to, which is it's a privilege.
And so then, how did you and your dad also approach the training side of things? Because would be so easy to just assume, like from the outside looking in, someone would be like, "All right, well, given how successful last year was, just copy and paste the training and just do it all over again." But when you're at the level that you're at, and there's silver, and that what the one medal that you can improve upon is, you have to look for sort of like those marginal gains and do a couple things differently. So on the training side of things, when you sat down of like how we want to do things a little bit differently, what did that look like?
It sort of started back. We do pretty similar base training every year, like just from October to December, and then we get a little bit more specific when we're spending more time on the track in January onwards. And it sort of came down to, okay, we were committed to the Grand Slams, which required the 800 and the 1500. So what are we going to do to really bring this 800 on? Because it hasn't been a strength of mine in the past. So we changed some things in terms to bring like some more 800 specific stuff in, but without like compromising the 15. So I bring in a fair bit more speed and speed endurance work that was just something that we haven't really touched on in the past. And I really enjoyed it because it was different. And I think it has sort of helped my 1500, but it may have taken a tiny bit away from it if we look big picture. We haven't done a season review just yet. We will in the weeks to come, but just right now it was like, take your break, fully reset, don't think too much. But yeah, I think we definitely focused in on that 800, 1500 zone a lot more, which I think I could probably run a good 3000 off that, but a 5000 would be way too far right now. So I think kind of that was the change that we made, was we focused a little bit more on that bottom end, which maybe has taken away from the very top end of my range. But we were kind of okay with that because we figured long term going forward, the 800 was an area of improvement that I could really work on. And we might not see that this year, but we will in the years to come. It's just like setting up kind of this whole Olympic cycle. So yeah, the 800 was the main change that we made, and just kind of dedicating a day each 10 days to kind of really work on that. And I learnt to love it. It's definitely an uncomfortable feeling, and that extreme lactic that you build up and then have to run through for at least another couple of reps is different to me. But I was really, really open to working on that, thinking about those Grand Slams and being ready for those.
So even in that base training and in that early season portion, like there was already kind of the mental concession that, all right, we're not gonna do the five because you had done the 5K like at the last World Championships in Budapest, and but did it go as far as thinking we can contest the 800 at the World Championships in addition to the 1500?
I was very aware that the 8:15 double was possible from back early days last year, probably October, once we kind of had that World Athletics schedule. So I was very conscious of that. I think it was a big, like, that would be a dream goal, but like very much like, wow, I've got to hold my horses a bit and see how these 800s actually go. So I definitely was not interested in the 5K in Tokyo. I had done that in Budapest and just the championship 5K. I was very much didn't belong there in 2023, but I was very much sure that I didn't want to do it in Tokyo just for the sake of having a second event. So focusing on the 1500 and then kind of that first 800 going so well in Jamaica, and I ran the standard without really trying to run it. And for us as Australians, that's the most important piece basically, is to get that standard, and then it's up to the discretion of our selectors if you don't run that event at your trials. And we didn't even enter the 800 for our trials because I wasn't sure that I would need it, and that was kind of the following week to Jamaica, so there was no time to enter that and get an entry. So I was pretty certain that having the standard was going to suit me, and kind of having run it in that first 800, I was like, well, surely I can go faster as I get used to this kind of racing and this lactic build-up that you have in the 800. But it just didn't really happen until Worlds, and I got kind of lucky there that our selectors took a gamble on me to run the 800 in Tokyo. But yeah, from back in early days of the season, I was aware the double was possible, but really uncertain if it was going to be something that suited me based on just having not focused on the 800 before.
Yeah, because it's like the 5K at the global stage is such a mixed bag. I mean, you've run 14:43, and yeah, I mean, that's the halfway point between where the race could fall. Like, it could end up being a 15-minute race with just a crazy final lap, or it's a 14:10 race up in the front and a bunch of people fall within like the 14:20s, and it's like you've never been in that territory yet. And so it's such a gamble to try and dive into the 5K. But when you see kind of these races unfold, I mean, partly it's what does Beatrice Chebet and like Faith Kipyegon want to do on the day, really. But when you see these races, like I guess, and you're structuring with the bigger picture being LA in 2028, do you think it's similar where it's like, all right, maybe in the year before the 2028 Olympics, we dedicate more time to the 5K again, just sort of similar to what you just did in the previous Olympic cycle where the 5K was contested in 23 before 24?
Yeah, it's an interesting thing to think about, and even like just kind of coming off the back of Tokyo and seeing the way that 5K went in the final, I was like, that's the 5K I want to be in.
Yeah.
But you just can't predict it. And like you say, there's such a big gap if Faith and Beatrice and Agnes and Gedich decide they want to run 14 flat to 14:10 that day. Like, I'm 200 meters behind at the moment, and that doesn't excite me. And that's the thing that's really hard about the 5K is unless you can kind of be in that kind of fitness even, it's really, really hard to contend for the win or to contend for a medal. And I think at this point in my career, that's really what's motivating me. But it's, yeah, when you watch a race like Tokyo for the heats and the final go, I was like, ooh, maybe I should have been in there. But it's always the way I feel like, because I drew Safan Hassan in my heat in Budapest. And it was quite funny because she had said to me the night before when I said to her, hey, we're in the same heat, because it was the day following the 1500 final. And she's like, oh, okay, I'll lead. And I was like, great, cool. Like thinking she'll lead and run like 15 flat, but she led and ran 14:35 or 14:34 or something. And I was out of it from maybe 2.4K, 2.5K in well before halfway. I was well and truly out of making it onto the next round. And it's just, yeah, it's definitely not fun to be that far behind. So I think it was just very much like, I don't really want to commit to the 5K just yet, knowing that there is a massive gap if those women run at their best that day.
Yeah, and I think like the other thing that was funny about like the one in Tokyo was that Nikki, I think, told me the story about just sort of like that bus picture of like everyone on the bus with Faith, and how the conversation there was like, oh, for the 5K, slow. We want it slow. And then Faith was like, haha, no. And then it ended up
Yeah,
being
yeah.
slow. Wait, were you on that
Yeah,
bus?
I was on that bus. That was after we were coming back from the heats, and the 1,500 girls that were running the 5K, Lyndon and Gabriella Stafford, were kind of trying to say to her, like, 5K, like, let's run slow, like, hope the milers out here. And Faith just laughed and she's like, huh, no. And I don't think she realized how funny it was in the moment of like just totally shutting that idea down. But yeah, I mean, that just speaks to the camaraderie of our event. We can laugh and joke with each other after we've stepped off the track and just kind of survived onto the semi-finals, and knowing that we have that race the next day, but there's still time for some good banter.
So when this camaraderie and like the bond between the 1500-meter women really kind of blossomed in the last couple of years, like you've been part of it, like really as like in this takeoff. When do you remember kind of being the first point where it's like, oh, like yes, there's this reverence for Faith, and like she kind of helps us all get the best out of ourselves, and we're seeing national records, personal best fall left and right as a result of her, but we can also be friends kind of off the track. I guess, do you remember sort of like the first moment that it was for you that you're like, oh, like yeah, I mean, we're rivals on the track, but as soon as the clock stops, and even, before the gun goes off, like we're all friends.
I think we definitely saw it that night in Florence when she first broke the world record. I think just seeing the field celebrate her, but then even down to like little moments like back in the hotel there where she kind of took the time to congratulate me on a national record, like before I could personally congratulate her on a world record. And I was like, that's just so extreme. Is like my national record is very small compared to what she has just done. But like she was very, very much like, I'm going to say congratulations to Jessica, as I'm like trying to congratulate her on the world record that we've all known kind of like she deserved to hold. Do you know what I mean? Like she had so many global titles that the world record just seemed like a matter of time. So I think just sort of knowing that, like, okay, she's worked for that for so long and then she's just achieved it, but she's still passing it forward down the field. It just kind of showed me the way that she's going to lead, and she's led us that way for pretty much 3 to 4 years now. So it's been just kind of cool to see from the top down that just began. And I think it's interesting because you can observe the similar things on the men's 1500 side. I think the dynamic and the atmosphere in those races and off the track comes from the top down. And I think we're just very lucky to have someone like Faith who is very much about just elevating the sport and passing it forward in our event, that it's just become the norm. And it's like, I think when we have new athletes coming in every year and just like looking up to that from the top, it just encourages that to stay the same and that camaraderie to pass forward. And even just having raced with someone like Nikki for so long now, I feel like we've kind of had such important pathways in our career and big milestone moments together that it's just like fun as well. So you're kind of achieving your big goals alongside someone that's worked for them as well, that you just kind of have this mutual respect and this shared admiration of kind of what we're doing on the track, and then you spend so much time together off the track on the circuit that you just become friends. And yeah, it's really, really special.
I think this was something that I had asked Nikki before the World Championships, sort of just like how you have to strike this balance in the women's 1500 in particular, where there's this reverence and respect for Faith, and then at the same time there's the realist side of like we all know what she's run and like what she's fully capable of, and then at the same time the self-belief that you have to have in yourself that you can still win the race, and you don't want to concede it before you get into the call room just because Faith is in the race. And so I am curious because I asked Nikki, but I'm curious how you balance that, knowing that you're probably one of the people who's come the closest to overcoming that.
Yeah, I think you almost have to just have this fearlessness towards it. Like you absolutely you can look at everything that each of the athletes have done and you can put them up on a pedestal, but I feel like you almost have to just be like, okay, they have done that. I'm going to try to do this today. And it's almost like she has created this network and this environment where it's okay to fail in a way. Like, especially having watched the sub four attempt this year, it's like it's okay to take a swing and miss. And I think having just watched the way that she has led her career, that it's like she's kind of encouraged us to like, okay, come with me, and if you can't hang on the whole way, you're still probably going to run pretty well, or very much like just be fearless and just try, and you never know what is possible. And I think very much my race plan for the final at Worlds was like, I'm just really going to try and hang. Like it's, I've done it before. I've stayed on in a Diamond League, but kind of doing it in a world final where medals are up for grabs, where you know if you swing that big, you could miss a medal completely. Uh, but it is very much like it's a point in my career that I'm at where I'm willing to take those risks. It's like I want to medal and I want to try and elevate from that silver in Paris. So you kind of have to be content with it completely backfiring. And I think having someone like Faith in the field who has just always been like throwing it down no matter where she was at, when she was coming back from a baby and she stuck it to Safan in 2019 until she couldn't. It's very much just like that's the mentality that I had to sort of have this year was, okay, I'm just going to try. And she's encouraged me to do that. So here we go.
The 350 that you ran last year in Paris, and I'm wondering how much courage did you have to kind of bottle up in the lead up to that to be able to be as fearless as you were in that race, to hang on to her for as long as possible. I think like that's probably been just one of the biggest efforts we've ever seen out of somebody to try and keep up with her. And so can you remember like what you were like that morning knowing that you were going to take that big of a swing?
Yeah, it's funny to look back on that day because like I was so confident the day before, like I knew I was really fit. I sort of thought I could run 352 that day, and I was like, to do that kind of thing, you have to just like you have to go with faith. Like that's I'm was pretty prepared to be kind of solo from about 600 out and just have to grind it to the finish line. And I completely surprised myself still being there at a K and then at the bell and then kind of almost still there at 1200. But there was so many times in the lead up that morning that I gave myself an out, I guess you could say, where even down to when we were in the call room and they told us about the two pacemakers where base pacemaker was going 203 and then there was a second pacemaker, I think it was for Laura Muir that day, going about 205, 206, kind of to send her on her way to British record. And even when you hear that kind of thing in the call room, it's like, well, if I don't get off the line as aggressively as I think I'm going to, I can just settle in with that second pace group. And it's like you kind of just have to squash that immediately. It's like, no, like you've spent kind of this last training block in St. Moritz thinking about going with faith. Like there's no better time. I was qualified for the Diamond League final already last year by the time the Paris Diamond League rolled around. So it was like, I just had to keep reminding myself, like, no, you're never going to have a better swing than this one. You've got to go with faith. And, but yeah, it is kind of crazy how when you're about to do something like that, your mind does look for the little outs that you can give it along the way. But I'm so glad that I took the risk and just had a big swing and surprised myself and even surprised like my dad a little bit, where it's like he's pretty accurate at predicting what we can do. But when you just get in a moment like that, and if we were in 352 shape, but you have all of that extra adrenaline and that extra encouragement of still being there at 1,000 meters and then still being there at the bell and still being there when she turns back and looks at you like, who and why are you still here? Like those little things accumulate. And I think just I got a perfect race that day, which it really doesn't happen that often. And it's the moments that we work so hard for and dream of. But I'm certainly trying to replicate that, which almost puts a lot more pressure on it and makes it a lot harder than it did last year when I kind of just was growing in confidence with every step that I was staying with faith in Paris. So yeah, it's one of those days that I'll look back on and just be like so proud of for a very long time.
I do want to go into like some of the big swings you took this year, but then after the Paris Diamond League, did it make just the idea of hanging on at the Olympics a little bit more alleviating, I would say, because we've seen in the past the different ways that the 1500 final at a global championships can happen, where when Faith takes it out, the medals already look like they're decided, or there's four people and three medals, and like the race is happening up in the front. but knowing that you had 350 fitness, and that very few people aside from Faith in the race like would have that it's like, okay, we are at least like in the medal conversation here. Like, was that easier, or is it still the stage of the Olympics is the add-on that brings the pressure and like the attention that makes it harder?
I think it made it a bit easier in a way, especially knowing once Gudaf Sege had chosen the 1500, it was like, okay, like they can't run away from me, and I think they're going to pull me to a medal. But that all looked extremely different when we got to Paris, and it's like that race unfolded, that the way that final unfolded, there was still 7 or 8 of us there at the bell, and it's like it wasn't like it was very very fast, but it wasn't like what fast had looked like in 2022, where the medals were decided 400 meters in, essentially in Eugene that year. So the whole event has leveled up, and it's very much like a faster race at that point in my career was my strength. So I could always fall back on that as like, okay, I can handle this and this is okay, and I've been here before. Whereas like fast forward to this year, it's like I feel like I'm way more well-rounded and I don't need it to go fast from the gun. But I certainly was, yeah, it was a comfort kind of feeling last year when that final was fast. It's like, okay, I can do this. This is the best opportunity for me to medal. But it certainly, like, yeah, it just kind of put me on the map, that 350. So I kind of did have to navigate that, like, okay, I was never in a medal conversation, and now it's like expected. That was a different sort of process to go through over that 3.5, 4 weeks from Paris Diamond League into the Paris Olympics. So yeah, I feel like I grew up a lot in the sport in that month very, very quickly. But I was certainly relieved when we lined up in that final and Gudaf just started sending it from the gun. I was like, okay, this is what I know how to do.
All right, so as we get into more of 2025, it became very clear, I guess, like through the Grand Slams, that it's like, all right, the 800 is working, the training is working. And then from there, you go off and race a couple Diamond Leagues. Well, pre-classic as well was a little bit of like a preview of what could come at the World Championships. But then I guess like taking it to the Diamond League final, like I'm wondering, like, what is it that you wanted to experiment with that race? Because it was like such a high stakes race to test out any sort of race tactics. And so obviously I think at this point, just sort of, you watched it back, you saw what happened, and you came to the conclusion it's like, all right, maybe I was a little too loaded going into that race. But was there anything in particular that you were looking to get out of that one ahead of the World Championships?
Yeah, that was a. I still don't really have any answers for that one. I hadn't watched it back until after Tokyo, because I sort of said to Dad when we were walking back from the stadium that night, I was like, I'm not going to learn anything from watching that back, am I? And he's like, don't watch it. I was like, okay. I've watched it back now, and sort of being a month removed, I'm like, it doesn't look as bad as it was in the moment. But yeah, it was certainly an experience. But I think it was just one of those things where it was like, considering the timing of Paris Diamond League to Paris Olympics last year and Zurich to Tokyo Worlds this year, I'd come off an awesome training block. I had kind of exceeded what I had been doing in the lead into Paris Olympics. So I was really, really prepared to, I was like, if I'm going to PB this year, it's going to be in Zurich. And then I think it just like the way the field lined up as well was Faith wasn't doing it. And she had told me that back at Prefontaine that she probably wouldn't run the Diamond League final. But then Deribe Wateji was initially in, and then she was out. And it kind of, the way the field shaped up, it was like, okay, if I want to PB today, or like capitalize on this fitness and just see what the fitness looks like before we go into a championships, and the championship style of racing, you might not get that fast time that I know is in there. I'm going to have to make it happen kind of myself. Or like I'm going to have to be the woman that gets to the front and pulls the field along to a pretty special day. And I think that's just something that I really don't have a ton of experience in doing. So I was pretty proud of the first 1200. Like that was a really great effort, and even the splits that came through. And I've since learnt that the 800 meter split that I split that day was quicker than Face World Record split. So that was definitely way too aggressive, way too aggressive. But I think in the moment I was just very much like 61s coming to me in training in some really big key sessions. Like 61 points in this race is just what I want to try and nail down. And I was really okay until I wasn't. It kind of came up on me very, very quickly with about 120, 110 meters to go. And I was like, just trying to stay on my feet down that home straight. And it's nothing I've ever experienced before. I've never been to that place in training or a race beforehand. But I think what was okay with me was like, okay, that was a huge, huge effort, but I came off it okay. Like I was able to train again 2 days later as planned and have the proper block that we had planned to have into Tokyo. Like I came off it fine. I was a bit sore just from like going to such extreme fatigue in the muscles, but in terms of like bouncing back for training and everything, like I was completely okay, which kind of gave me the confidence like, okay, that's not going to happen again. That was very much just like I oversent it early and I still had a significant portion of the race to go. So it was very much more of a learning about like, okay, just you don't need to be so aggressive when you're going for these big things. It's just like, just dial it back a tiny bit, but to be able to bounce off it quite well, I knew that by the time we got to Tokyo, that it would sink in as like an effort that had kind of helped me prepare. So yeah, it was very much a day that I don't really have a straight up answer for, other than we trained really hard into it. I probably oversent that first 800 meters, and then yeah, just kind of absorbed it and hopefully like was very much trusting it was going to help me in Tokyo.
Yeah, I guess like us as pundits, I think that was the first thing that kind of was Mac's red flag, was like, it's not about just like what just happened. It's like how Jess's body is going to come off of that crazy hard of an effort. And then, what's it going to do for the next couple days? Does it change things leading into Tokyo? And then to hear that you're just like, no, I mean, like a little bit of soreness, but was able to work out normally, didn't watch it back. It's like you put that behind you so quick.
Yeah, and that's like the way we train, like we do go, especially at that time of year, we go hard every 48 hours. So I was like, as long as I use the next 48 hours to recover and like really like just don't do anything that's going to put me deeper into a hole, I think I'm going to be okay. And that was very much like with dad around me, my training partner, and my husband was with me too all year this year. It's like I just had people around me that kept me in that bubble and in that mindset and didn't let me spiral and be like, what does this mean? That it was like, okay, when I went down to the track on the Sunday in Kipyegon, I was able to nail a session that one that gives me a lot of confidence when we're getting ready for a big 1500. And I kind of was like, okay, if I can do that 3 days later and I'm okay here, like I'm not redlining and I'm not going further over the hole, then we're going to be fine. Like, and it's like, I probably would have liked not to have that as my last race before Tokyo, because I definitely was feeling it out in the heats and the semis in Tokyo just to be sure, okay, like I don't think this is going to happen again. But it did a little bit in the final, but it was very much, I knew how to handle it and how to manage it. So yeah, I kind of tried to just take away the learnings from it and not overthink like what it meant in the grand scheme of things, because we just didn't have time really. It was like, I can't fit another race in even if I want to now. So we just got to move on.
All right, so once we get to Tokyo, first round, business as usual, and then I guess, was it the semifinal, I guess, where you have the moment with Nikki where I think mid-race you turn and say, like, let's take it or whatever? What's your vantage point and story behind this one?
Yeah, it was slow. It was, and very much like I kind of just wanted to run it like I had run the heat, where it was like, I am very confident in my closing gears at the moment, that I was like, there's no need to go and hammer this. It's like, just put yourself at the front, stay out of trouble, and control it from second, essentially. So Nikki and I ended up next to each other on the front line there, but behind us there was just so much carnage going on, and a few times like we got some shoves in the back that I was like, once we sort of heard the ripple effect of I think it was Marta Zanoni and the German girl, Weasel, and Alfonso as well, had kind of like ricocheted through that whole pack. And we heard that, and I just said to Nikki, I was like, okay, let's get it going. Like, we both deserve to make the final. That it's like very much like we're next to each other on the front here, like, let's just open it up. And Nikki sort of said to me, yep, okay. And so I'm thinking, okay, we're working together here. And from about 700, we really started shifting gears. And we crossed the finish line, and Nikki's like, what did you say to me? And I was like, I said, let's open it up. And they were like, "Oh, I thought that's what you said." And I said, "So you just responded without really knowing what I said, but off we went with it." So I think we were on the same wavelength, but obviously, like with a crowd, you couldn't quite hear what each other were saying. That it was very much like it was just funny how we were able to understand what each other meant without directly hearing each other properly.
It's great teamwork. It's such a good story. And then just, I mean, it all worked out perfectly for everybody in that sense. Like there was no miscommunication. Everyone went through and it sets up for like a great final. So from there, game planning for the final, what were you expecting? And like, what was sort of like the race plan that when you sit down with your dad and approach the world championship final against Faith Kipyegon, like to draw up a race plan to win, what does that look like?
It was a little harder to sort of predict this year without a good Sege or a Safan Hassan in there. I feel like if you looked at Faith's patterns in previous years was in come those championship finals, we had always had someone that just like went for it for all of us to follow. And then the year that we didn't in Budapest, Faith didn't go from, she led the race, but she controlled it and it really didn't go until the last 500-600 meters. So it was a little more ambiguous this year, kind of just like seeing who was in the final, who wasn't in the final, and who wasn't even in the 1500 overall. It was a bit like a bit more unsure of like how it was going to go, whereas kind of every other year we've been able to predict like what would happen. So it was very much like, okay, we think Faith will lead, but it might not be crazy fast from the gun. And it wasn't like we were 207 at 800, which is quite controlled for all of us. But I think it never really felt that comfortable. And I think having looked back at the splits now and sort of seeing like even just watching it and kind of watching it with the eye of like, okay, why didn't that feel good? I think it was like you've got to give massive credit to Faith Kipyegon for who she is and what she does, because it's like off the back of the heat and the final, but then the way that final felt was like it felt like there were moments where we were comfortable, and then there were moments where I was like, wow, we're really running now, even early on. So I don't know if there was like some surging or some like different points where it was like she kind of like hit the gas for 50 meters or so and then backed it off, like, and that happens naturally sometimes just with the crowd and as they get excited. But there was definitely like it didn't feel like a smooth 207 to me, and I know it was like winding up as we went, but the winding felt like she really knew what she was doing to grind the gears down of that field. And looking back at it with like kind of knowing how it played out, the respect that I have for someone to be able to execute a race like that on the world stage in a global final when when a medal and a gold medal are on the line, it's incredible. And just even the section of the race that I think is her most impressive is like 800 to 1300, because I think she split something like 74 low, like 114, which is it's sub to 800-meter pace at that point, with still having like another 200 meters to go. And it's not like it was like deadly slow at 800 meters where you see those huge shifts. Like it was still sub 4-minute pace at halfway, and then she still had that kind of gear with a significant part of the race where the last 200 is like where that medal is won. And the way she's kind of running off that bend, it was incredible to have done something like that from the front. And even in those conditions, like I know it's a 1500, but at that point you've spent a heat, a semi, and then the preparation for a final out in those conditions, and she's still executed it like that. It's like that's why she is the champion of our event, and kind of the goalpost for us all to try and get to.
It was such a master class. And like you look at I think they had the every 100-meter split, and
Yeah.
Faith was leading from the first 100 onward, and it's like this squeezing the life out of her competitors. It was like so impressive just how well executed that whole thing was. And like at the very beginning you're just like, yeah, I mean, it's not everyone should still be in contention for it. And then like you said, I think it was like going into before the bell lap, that third lap was just sort of like, all right, this is where she's really making a move. And it was just so vicious. But I mean, again, yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly. It's why she is who she is. And so even looking at the splits, like you were in touch with 200 meters to go. And even that last final 200 of hers was so remarkable. And you've been in so many races now where you're one of the people who's got the best vantage point of what it's like when Faith Kipyegon turns on the jets and goes. Like, can you describe that for us as like, I know it's like, yeah, it's the worst thing that could happen to you in a race because there's no matching it or covering it entirely. But I mean, as a competitor, what happens in that moment? What do you see and what do you notice that is like you don't even have that much time to think?
Yeah, it's like one of them things that you see it before you feel it. Like you go from being like, okay, I'm okay, stay right here, stay connected, and then suddenly it's like there's like 3 or 4 steps on you, and it's like, wow, like it's you kind of have to just stay in the race and not think about that too much. But I think having had so many times now where it's like somewhere in that last 300 she's going to pull away and kind of like I got a little further than like I have in Prefontaine and Paris to be there at 200, but it's still just so significant when she shifts that gear. And I think that is one of her best weapons is like she can go to her top gear like from further out than a lot of people can. A lot of people wait for that final turn and to come off the turn, whereas like Faith is very comfortable getting to that top gear before the straight. And I think it just like it makes anyone behind her like question themselves or like and question if they can go from this far out that before you even realize she started to pull away it's like she's already gone. It's kind of like it's pretty incredible just seeing, especially having led that final from the gun, how she still had that turn of gear. And it just, yeah, very much you have to then focus on yourself and just focus on the race. And the screens in Tokyo were incredible. Like you could use the screens to kind of see who was there, and they were showing our race every time we were out there. So when I turned into the straight and saw that Nelly and Dorcas were there, I knew I was like, okay, I have a battle on my hands. So you very much then kind of forget about what Faith is doing and try and hold on to that medal down the home straight. So yeah, it's distracting in the moment a little bit, but then it's a reminder of like, okay, the race is still happening. Like you got to get to the line.
Heart rate, adrenaline pumping, like, okay, take me through focusing on your final 200 and trying you're at that point you're playing defense.
Very much defense is a good way to describe it. I think I there were shades of Zurich for me a little bit where it was
Yeah.
like, okay, I really don't have a lot in my legs, but I cannot lose a medal right now. And that was like I kind of knew how to talk myself through it a little bit more, having Zurich in my like experience repertoire, I guess you could say. But yeah, it was like I just was like, okay, hold on, like stay tall, stay turning your legs, and just like defend, I guess. And Dorcas came past really strongly for the silver, and that was a huge breakthrough for her. And then to sort of be battling with Nelly for that bronze in the final strides, it was so strange because that's like exactly flashback to Zurich where we were kind of like in that last couple of strides. It was like who's going to win the Diamond League final. That yeah, I kind of just relied on that. Okay, I've been here, I can do this time, and lean for the line. And I really didn't know until they flashed it up on the board. I was like, did I just completely lose a medal? Like, but I do know, looking back on it, like there is nothing more I could have done in that race. I'm like, I took myself to zero, so I got everything out of myself. I physically and mentally, like, there's nothing different I could have done. And just like that last 40, 50 meters, I was like, please just don't lose a medal entirely. And yeah, I was able to get across the line, but I am really proud of the bronze in that moment because I'm like, well, there's no different race I could have ran that like I could have maybe ran a bit safer and we entirely let Faith go and we ran differently. But I don't really think that that's kind of a race that I would be proud of. Like I've never really been one to hold back and try and finish a place or two higher because I've sat back and kicked. Like that's just not the racing that excites me. Is like I kind of grow in it if I'm like in it kind of thing. So I wouldn't really change anything. But other than maybe trying to hold that last 100 meters together a little bit better. But I think in saying that, like knowing that I got everything out of myself, I had to be proud. And I was really lucky that it flashed up that I still held on to the bronze as a good symbol of that.
I watched the NBC version, and I wonder if it's in like other versions of like the video that's out there. But the final 20 meters where you're like, where at that point, like Dorcas passes you on your right, and Nelly's, on in lane one on your left, but you even in that final 100 meters, there was just a quick look I think that you had made over your right shoulder, and so even just before the finish line, there's a moment where you veer off into lane two mostly, and it kind of opened up lane one even more for Nelly. Like just at that point, like running on instinct, like I'm sure your brain was mush at that point to just trying to get to the finish line.
Yeah, I don't know what that move was at all. I can't really analyze it and give you a good answer, but I do think I'm thinking maybe I thought I could pass Dorcas back in that the gap between Nelly and Dorcas wasn't big enough for me to get through. Like that's the only thing I can really put it down to is like instinctively maybe I thought, okay, I can get back past, and I've sort of tried to go back around to do that. But yeah, no, I really don't know. I think that was just extreme fatigue, and I didn't really know what moves I was making. But
I don't blame anyone for any moves that they make in the final 10, 50 meters of a race.
yeah,
Totally.
yeah.
And you held on for the bronze, and that, I mean, it was remarkable. So even in the as Faith is celebrating, I think it came out later on that she thought you had held on for silver, and it wasn't until like they're in the mix zone talking to like the Canyon reporters that she realizes Dorcas actually ended up with the silver and you got bronze. And I think it also kind of goes to just like speak to, I think, the level of respect that she has for you, knowing one, I think in some of her post-race comments is like she knew you had a kick and that she had to run the race exactly how she did because you were a threat. And then at the same time, like she assumed that you ended up in with silver.
Yeah, I think she said that it was because like when she looked at the screen just after 200, it was me that was with her. She said, I just saw blonde. And I think she kind of knew, she was like, okay, Jessica's right here. And I think she just assumed that I held on, which I really, really appreciate that she had that respect for me. But yeah, it was pretty funny to watch that little moment where her and Dorcas was like, no, I got the silver. So yeah, I think, I mean, when we get to do the victory lap together and Faith has just, I'm sure was so excited about the way she executed the race for her win. You kind of don't take in all of those little things. And then when I was on the victory lap and Dorcas was with her, she probably just still hadn't put it all together. I think if it had been a Kenyan sweep, then she definitely would have realised I didn't get the silver, let alone the bronze. But yeah, I think it was very much like just in the moment, wrapped up in the excitement of it all. She hadn't quite realised, and I really do appreciate that. She believed I could hold on, but not quite this year.
All right, so then I think it was the rule was I think from your dad is like celebrate the 1500 medal and then give it a day or so, and then that's when you start to game plan for the 800. So with a medal in the 15, did it sort of just like you described it I think on your Instagram as like living a whole nother life running the 800. But did you have to kind of let go of just like, all right, I just put myself through that, and now this is just sort of like treating it like a whole nother chapter of the World Championships?
Definitely, and I think like yeah, it really did feel like a second life. Like it was everything reset was even the pressure and expectation didn't fall on me in the 800 whatsoever. That it was very much like just kind of go out there and explore and see what you can do and learn a lot from these rounds. Was I couldn't really think about the 800 until at least we had heat sheets because I haven't ran enough of them that it was like there's not really any point being like thinking too much about a certain person if I never have to race them in this championships. Like, so once the heats came out, it was like, okay, now I can think about how to navigate these fields and what might be my strength. And I think it didn't really matter to me who was in these races. Like, I have a very certain way I have to run the 800. Like, I can't get out in 26 seconds. So I'm going to be coming from the back, and it kind of just, it looks to me like it looks a bit different based on who's in the field as to when I can predict I might get attached. And I think that was very much like, okay, I know how I have to run, and then we'll just see who's in the field, and then I can put some metrics on it. So I got to enjoy the 1500 because I couldn't really start being an 800 runner until we at least had heat sheets. So yeah, it was a good way. Definitely having that day off in between makes it a much more doable double just to reset entirely and come back as like with that second life.
All right, so when the first round goes the way it does, and you're caught up in a fall, I, as soon as that happens, like you do end up, you get back up and you finish the race. Are you were you thinking like, all right, like I'm gonna move on and get put through to the next round, and this thing is gonna keep going, or was there a little degree of you thinking, all right, this is how it ends?
Yeah, I really didn't know because like it's like I've never been on that side of things relying on kind of to be advanced. I've always done it for myself. So it was like, okay, I think I was tripped from behind. I'm not entirely sure. It all happened so fast that until I saw some footage of it and I was like, oh, okay, yeah, there was nothing I could do. I was then pretty confident that I would be advanced, but it happened so early on in the race too. It's like hard to say that would I have held that position? And I think the ruling on the advancement was that when I did fall, I was in a position of advancement. But I'm like, well, yes, but it was 200 meters into an 800, so
It's so
it's
early.
like, so I didn't really know. I was like, I'm pretty sure I can get advanced because there's nothing more I could have done to stay on my feet. But I was waiting on it, and they turned it around pretty quickly by the time I got back to the warm up track to cool down and just proceed as though I was advancing. Our high performance manager had called dad and said, yep, she's been advanced. So it was like, okay, well, that's over and we'll get another chance. So I was just I was content with the 15 and that, like, okay, if it ends here, at least it wasn't my main event. But it was at the same time, I was like, I know I have a big 800 in my legs. I just want to see what that looks like. So that was kind of once I did get that proceeding through to the semi final, I was like, okay, I've got to make the most of this. Like I can PB here, and I think I can go under the current Australian record at that point. That I was like, by the time once we saw the semi-finals, I was like, okay, make the most of this one.
All right, so word to the wise to anyone who wants to advance to semifinals is just go down in an advancing position in the first 200 meters of your heats, and hopefully you'll get through to the next round.
Yeah,
Lesson
well,
learned for
even
everybody.
that, but even that like had shocked me in the moment. Like to be in the front 200 meters in, I was like, what is happening here? Because like that's not kind of like I can't get off the line, and so kind of I think I was then a little cautious off the line in the next round because I was like, well, I don't accidentally want to end up in the front in the mess of it all. That yeah, it was a the whole thing was just like something that has never happened, and I'm very glad it wasn't the 1500-meter final because I don't think I could have regrouped like I did if it had have been like in the 15.
All right, so then you do make the most out of that semifinal and you run 157.15. All right, what went so right in this one and you did end up making the most of the opportunity?
Yeah, I think I just ran my race, and that was that's something I've been trying to do in like the 800 all year was just to run the race that is the most effective for me to run fast in the 800. And I think it was really good for me to have Sage out there in my semi final because neither, well, Sage is much better at this than I am, but neither of us can quite get out with the 800-meter women that come from the 400 side of things. So I kind of was able to gauge off Sage for that first 300 or so, where it's like Sage is starting to get on and I'm getting a little bit closer, just gradually, kind of as she's moving up, I'm moving up, but from further behind. That I was like kind of able to get through that first 3 to 400 quite well. But then it's very much like for that second 400 is like I can't settle at any point. I just have to keep moving up. So I made a good move right before the bell to put myself right on Daguma and Wero that I was like in their pocket and I was like, this is the best place to be. Like these women are going to pull me through to where I want to go. And we kind of assumed that the little cues would come from our semi-final that based on how deep it was. And I was a bit of an unknown, I think, that people might not have realized what I was capable of in an 800 if I got the right opportunity. So kind of just to get in that pocket with those two women that had been doing so well all year and to just stay there and trust myself. It was really, really important, I think, for me to sort of see as well that I could run on that red line and I could be okay in the last 100 as well because it's like something that just wasn't quite happening in the 1500. To just sort of be like, no pressure here, but I'm just going to see if I can stick. And I think it was the strongest race I probably ran across the whole championships was that 800-meter semi. And that just came from having a chance and taking the opportunity and just kind of running my own race amongst like some really, really strong hitters in the 800.
Of the whole entire championships and all of the competitors, you were the happiest person to sit in the elimination chairs. Like you had a smile on your face from the moment you sat down. You felt very confident that that time would hold up, after the following heat, semifinal heat that followed. But it was just so funny. I'll ask the same question I asked Sage, which is like, did you notice if anyone had wiped down those chairs for you before you sat down? Because that's the only thing that's kind of been like top of my mind was just sort of like, oh, there's a hygiene component to this whole entire thing. Like, have they, like, there's so many sweaty people sitting in those things, but are they wiping? And everyone's caught up in just like, I just finished a race. They don't even pay any mind to it. But did you notice anyone cleaning up those chairs or no?
I didn't notice, but they ushered us there so quickly, and like basically they needed us sitting down before they could start the next race. So they kind of just like ushered us there and we sat down. But I don't know if they did that in between. I'd hope so, but yeah.
You looked so happy, and then Sage was still a little bit like stressing after that one. What's the conversation taking place between the two of you during the race? Was there any speaking of like watching the next one unfold?
Yeah, I was pretty confident for both of us, just knowing who was to come in the next semi and the way Keely had executed her heat. She had just wanted to control it from the front without doing any more than she had to. So I kind of was quite confident for both of us. I was like, I think we're going to be okay because Keely will control this. And when the Olympic champion wants to control a race, like it takes a lot of guts from somebody else to like take that control position from her. And I didn't really see that happening based on who was in the race. I was really confident in Abby Caldwell because like she's an Australian and I knew the way she'd been training. We'd been on camps in the same place a few times this year, and I know kind of what she wanted out of this championship. So I was quite confident that Abby was going to press Keely, which kind of knowing like, and that's kind of how it did unfold for the first 500 meters. But when Abby had that position, no one else could have it, and it's like no one kind of tried to press beyond them. So I think just the intel I had and the understanding of the way Keely had run the heat, I was like, I think we're going to be okay. And Sage is like, I need to see it. And I'm like, no, I think we're going to be fine. So yeah, I think it was like, I knew we had the deepest semi and kind of like the times that we had ran, I was like, okay, that they're going to be enough to advance. We're okay. And yeah, but it must have been quite contrasting seeing like the emotions on both of our faces. And I think at that point too, I was like, well, I finally ran the PB that I knew I could. I've broken the Australian record. Like if that's not enough, like I don't know what else I could have done. So I kind of had to be content if that wasn't enough to make the final.
Yeah, so I mean, you seem pretty fulfilled after that semifinal that you had nothing to lose come the actual 800-meter final. What did you want to get out of that final race?
I think I kind of thought I could go a little bit quicker if I had another perfect day. Like I could go a tiny bit faster, and I ended up like running 0.15 slower, so I was back in the ballpark, which to me just confirmed, okay, I didn't fluke that first one. Like I am a 157 low person, but I think I just wanted to see what I could do in a field like that. Like I think the final was it was extremely fast, and like that's a huge gap in what these top 800-meter women are doing and what my capabilities in the 800 are right now. But I think I just kind of wanted to execute the same way, run my own race, and hopefully get attached at some point. And I think we were sort of the understanding if I could be really, really patient, like, and this thing goes out as fast as we're expecting it to, I might be able to pick up some pieces in the last 150 meters. And I know when I saw the 55 high split at Frozen on the Clock when I came through, I was like, oh, okay, like stay in this because like it's probably going to be some carnage. And there wasn't. Like that's like the hugest credit to the top women in that 800 was like no one really fell apart off such a crazy pace in the first 400. Like I guess Mary kind of started coming back towards me, but she still held on for seventh and I was eighth. So it was like, and she had done her job, I think, at that point to send Odira up with the best chance to kind of cause some ruckus at the front. And I think that was like kind of the thing we took away was like, wow, like this event, like, and these women are incredible. Like they can go out that fast, and there was no one fell apart, which is a pretty historic final to be a part of. But yeah, it was kind of crazy to be so far back, even coming into the home straight, and I sort of was able to watch the battle between like Lily and Odira coming on the outside, and then Keely and Georgia, and it's like this is the best seat in the house to see this, but like I got to finish my own race as well. So yeah, really really cool final to be a part of, and it does sort of spark like a little bit more interest in the 800 for me. Is like, okay, like at the front these women are incredible, but like okay, what can we maybe do in the 8 if we keep sort of exploring what that looks like in training and stuff, and like trying to get a bit closer. And I don't think 154 is in my wheelhouse, but like maybe I can get into the 156s, and then if you catch a good day, like maybe that looks like 155. Like sort of Georgia had ran 155 in Zurich, and then caught a perfect day and a little bit more prepared for the 800 come Tokyo. That would look like another 1 second improvement. So yeah, it's the women are incredible in that event as well, and just sort of seeing how they've designed their season. I'm like, well, maybe I can get a bit faster if we keep focusing on this and get a part of that front race, whereas I was sort of time trialing from the back on my own for that final.
It was really funny to watch. The gun goes off, and you could see who the people with the 400 chops are battling up towards the front, and then you have Mary Moore and Keeley essentially fighting for who's gonna be in the pole position, and you're just kind of hanging back, and like you watch the gap, and it's really fun to watch unfold, because then once you take a look at the final results, it's like, oh, she ended up right with them all, because
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
it was really funny. But yeah, it was a very, very entertaining race. So, all right, amazing world championships, and then I guess like, yeah, it's only been like 2 weeks since Tokyo, but next year there's like the ultimate championships, and it's not necessarily an off year, but it does allow for people to experiment a bit more, focus on one event or another. Yeah, I know you haven't sat down to decompress off of 2025 with your dad yet, but where's your sort of like appetite for 2026 at right now?
Yeah, so we have the Commonwealth Games next year too, which is it is huge as an Australian, and it's probably behind the Olympics. It's probably the most watched track and field we have in Australia. So I think definitely prioritizing the Commonwealth Games pretty highly, and if you do even look at that World Champs 800 final, like you take out Sage and Audrey Guerrero, and you add back in like Prudence Segediso and Oratal Noe, or like Abby Caldwell, Claudia Hollingsworth, it's like it's just as deep in a way, like the
Yeah.
Commonwealth 800 at least. Not to say that that's where we're going to focus. I'll definitely prioritize the mile there, and if there is room to double, I would like to, whether that's the 800 or maybe it's the 5K. Like I'm not entirely sure just yet. It depends how the schedule's set up. But I think that's sort of something that really does excite me, is like the Commonwealth Games and the caliber of that field. And I think it has sort of been a championships that you never know when the last one's going to be. Like we had it in Birmingham in 2022, and then we had some issues finding a host for 2026, and right now there's no host for 2030. That it kind of feels like there's an opportunity there if athletics is really strongly supported there, and the athletes prioritize that championships, like maybe that gives life to the 2030 version and beyond kind of thing. Is like if the athletes show up, do their job, create the hype, like maybe that helps the championship survive another 4 years. That's something that really excites me to commit to and to prioritize that second part of the year around. But I think just now it's like World Cross, World Indoors is kind of like that first goal and that first step. And then Commonwealth Games, Ultimate Champs, and World Road Champs for the mile in September. So it is another big year. Yes, there's no outdoor worlds and no Olympics, but there's a lot of stuff on the calendar that makes it exciting, and will definitely make it easy to start putting the miles back in, knowing what we're building towards. But yeah, I think the mile at the Commonwealth Games is the big thing that at the moment feels like that's going to be where my energy prioritizes.
It's such a loaded calendar that I feel like, all right, you're gonna get through next year, and it's like, all right, and LA is a year and a half away from now.
Yeah, yeah, I think it's the thing that's like, yes, it's an off year, but there's still a lot of like events on, and there's still a lot of things going on. And I think it does afford like the luxury of like doing some different things and trying some different things in race distances and stuff. And I don't know that there's much. I'm definitely not going up to 10K. And I joked about the steeplechase to my husband, and he was like, no. So I think there's no room to really experiment for me beyond the 800, the 1500, maybe a few 5Ks. I'd love to run a good 3K if we could fit that in. But yeah, I think for me, it'll just be like business as usual. And I guess we just don't have quite the drainingness of like a 10-day championship next year, because even Commonwealth Games Fast is only over a 5-day window. So I think that will sort of help keep things fresh, even though there is a loaded calendar. Is there's just no like 9-10 day championship at the end where you just feel like you're staying up for a lot of days in a row.
It's funny because like Sage steps off the track, and then on NBC she's asked about LA 2028, which was crazy because it's like with the depth of the US women's 800, like there's no guarantee that even like, I mean, look at this year's team was totally different than last year's team for the United States in the 800. Like the 2028 team could look totally different. And even in the mixed zone, when you came through, you were asked about 2028. But I feel like as an Australian, like you're probably already even fielding questions about 2032. Like has like that feels like a video game number out there, but like for you, it's something that you do have to think about.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like it's really hard to be in the moment in the sport because everyone wants to know what's next or what's coming. So it's like it's like you have to be very, very calculated about like not thinking too far ahead. And I am someone that likes to think ahead. I like to kind of know what's coming. I like to plan. But 2032 for me is like I always thought I would be in the marathon if I was in something. I was like, yeah, I'll run the marathon there and that'll be it, like kind of thing. But I think having especially this Olympic cycle being so 1500 focused, and then whatever suits around that, like running some eights and some 5Ks to support that, it does leave the 5K 10K on the table if I do want to kind of I don't think I could run the 1500 in Brisbane in 2032. I'd be 35 turning 36. And I mean it is really cool seeing kind of the lifespan of the athlete extending right now based on like all the technology and just like the research and things that we know now. Like I do think we'd have more life in our career, but I don't know about lining up in the 1500 in 2032. But Dad had joked to me that if I was looking at the marathon, I'd be looking for a new coach. Like he's like, I don't, he's like, I don't want you hanging on for the sake of like just hanging on and trying to go to another Olympics. He's like, if you have the desire and you really want to do it, like we could maybe talk about it. But he's like, just to run the marathon, just to run it, like don't do that. And I think now that the idea of maybe still having some track legs left with the 5K and maybe beyond, come 2032, if my mind is still excited for things, is like he's more open to that idea than if I was like making my debut on the roads to try and run the marathon in 2032.
I mean, just imagine what spikes you're going to have over the next couple of years to preserve those track legs too. So I mean, like I think you're living in
Yeah.
the best era of track, both, you know, just advances in training, technology, all that kind of stuff to hopefully make it conducive that you're still on the track come 2032. But for now, definitely tons to celebrate after such a successful 2024 and 2025. And we know that these, you know, things stack up. And so excited for more success from you in 2026, Jess. So thanks so much for taking the time to reflect on it with me.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. I've been really enjoying this series, so it's fun to hear from the other athletes and how they experience Tokyo. Because yeah, the season kind of ends and we all go our separate ways. So it's really nice to wrap it up like this, and I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Jess.